The notion of a lost civilization was not a new idea. From Plato comes the story of Atlantis, a great advanced civilization. And the suggestion is that it's this hubris, this conceit of Atlantis, that it had become so sure of itself that somehow the universe struck it down. If, for example, we were to face another comet impact as we did 12,800 years ago, I don't believe that our civilization would survive such a cataclysm. Those who would survive would be hunter-gatherers, people like the Kalahari Bushmen. Hunter-gatherers are in the business of survival, and they would get through it. And 10,000 years from now, their descendants might tell a story about how there had been a time when there was a great civilization on this earth. So advanced, its powers were almost miraculous. Do you know, they could send people to the moon. They could fly around the world. They could speak to each other on other sides of the planet. But something went wrong. They became cruel. They became arrogant. They began to impose their will on others. They ceased to wear their prosperity with moderation, and the universe struck them down. I think there's a message in the Atlantis story for our civilization. We should stop being so fucking arrogant and proud in our achievements. We should show some humility, and we should learn the lessons of the past.
Mr. Graham Hancock is back in the building for a record third time, a three-peat. We've never done this in the history of London Real, but who better than Mr. Graham Hancock to come back and talk to us? He is an extraordinary man. I still remember preparing for days and days when Graham first came into our studios over 4 years ago. At the time, he was by far our highest caliber guest. He had been on the Joe Rogan show many times, and he was talking about things that we wanted to talk about. And I still remember the first question I asked. I said, Graham, you once said that all politicians should drink ayahuasca 10 times before running for office. And from there, he took the ball and ran with it. He talked about writing, he talked about psychedelics, he talked about his own very personal struggle with cannabis, and this time Graham did not disappoint. He was back to talk about his latest book, Magicians of the Gods, to also speak about his fiction series, War God, and to continue beating the drum about the fact that as humans, we deserve to have sovereignty over our own bodies. We need to make our own choices. And when I go and am invited down to the Royal Society in London by Professor David Nutt and Amanda Fielding, Graham Hancock's in the audience, along with Rupert Sheldrake and all of these very intelligent people supporting issues like LSD research. And it's just such a pleasure to have Graham. He is such a great icon, and I think he really is a British treasure, along with some of the other names that I mentioned here. So I know you're going to really enjoy this talk with Graham. Again, it was just fiery, and everything is just packed with knowledge, and so just so grateful to have him on the show, and I know you're going to enjoy it very much. Of course, I am coming at you from Shoreditch, one of the most beautiful places in London. Come check it out, or come see us in the studio sometime. And I am loving the videos I'm watching from all of you around the world. Thank you so much for posting videos of you getting out of your comfort zone on our academy. We've got our Create and Connect 4-week cycle that pushes people to do different things, to challenge yourself, to make a plan, to be accountable, not to mention the body and mind challenges. If I see one more video of someone taking a cold shower naked. I'm gonna fall off my chair. Not to mention, we did a Get Up Early challenge. We did an affirmation challenge, all inspired by guests on London Real. So all that good stuff is happening over the Academy. But I just wanted to say thank you all for those videos. It just always uplifts my spirits. I get home at night and I get on the activity feed and I watch one of those. So it's all good here in London. We are back in the mix. We are cranking things out. And now I leave you with Mr. Graham Hancock. Pay attention. This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is Graham Hancock, the British journalist and author of the best-selling books, The Sign and the Seal, Fingerprints of the Gods, the War Gods series, Supernatural, and your most recent book, Magicians of the Gods. You specialize in unconventional theories involving ancient civilizations, stone monuments and megaliths, astrological data from the past, and altered states of consciousness. Your books have sold more than 5 million copies worldwide and have been translated into 27 languages. Graham, welcome back to London Real.
Thanks. Good to be with you again.
Great to have you here. You're the only time we've ever had a guest on for 3 times. And so, you know, it's just always a pleasure to have you here.
Well, thanks.
If I actually mark your visits, it's kind of like a history of London Real. You were here first 4 years ago.
In the early days,
Yeah, and then 3 years ago. And I still remember that first visit. It was so powerful. I remember I prepared like 4 days for it. And you came on and you just spoke so honestly about everything, about consciousness. We talked about ayahuasca, cannabis, and it was just great. And I just, before we even get started, I just want to acknowledge you for all the work you've done and you just keep it real all the time, Graham. And that's, whenever I see you in an interview or on a Rogan show, you're always speaking, hard truths, calling the world out for what it is, and it's refreshing. So.
Well, thank you. That's nice of you to say that. I just do what I do. I mean, there's nothing complicated or special about it.
Yeah, you seem to be very true to what you're doing. So what has been happening with you the past 3 years? I know Magicians came out last year. People had waited a long time for that book. I believe Fingerprints was out in '95, is that right?
Fingerprints of the Gods is definitely the book that I'm best known for. Yeah. And it proposes that we are a species with amnesia, that there has been a forgotten episode of high civilization in the remote human past, back during the Ice Age. That was the case that I made in Fingerprints of the Gods. It was a very controversial book. It tackled many of the ideals of mainstream history head on. It suggested that the whole story we've been told about the origins of civilization is wrong. And that book was published in 1995, which is, well, we're sitting here in 2016, so amazingly that's 21 years have passed since I wrote Fingerprints.
And that book came about because you were a journalist in Africa. You had made a trip to Ethiopia and you started just asking questions, right? Because you didn't set out to be...
I had a very little interest in the ancient past, as a matter of fact. I was totally a current affairs guy during the 1970s and the 1980s. But it was reporting a current affairs story in Ethiopia that led me to Ethiopia's claim to possess the lost Ark of the Covenant, which is actually central to the whole culture of Ethiopia. And I thought that was a story worth investigating. And it was a story about the past, and it drew me into the past in most unexpected ways. And I suddenly found that I think of myself as an investigative journalist, but let's investigate the past. Let's look at what's going on in our backyard. Let's see what really may have been the story of humanity. Let's not just accept what we're told by the so-called experts in the field. Let's look into this ourselves. So that was my project with Fingerprints of the Gods. Was to bring that. Now, of course, it's not, even in 1995, the notion of a lost civilization was not a new idea. That notion has been around for a very long time. We can take that notion actually back thousands and thousands of years. The most famous example is Plato, the Greek philosopher Plato, who gave us the story of Atlantis. From Plato comes the story of Atlantis, a great advanced civilization which had navigating and seafaring skills, which could explore the world, which built gigantic buildings, which had advanced knowledge in every area, which was prosperous and powerful. But then Plato says that corruption crept into this society, that it became cruel and avaricious, it became greedy, it began to impose its power around the world. And he has a very ringing phrase. He said that Atlantis ceased to wear its prosperity with moderation. And the suggestion is that it's this hubris, this conceit of Atlantis, that it had become so sure of itself that somehow the universe struck it down, and we have the cataclysm of flood and disaster, and Atlantis is submerged beneath the waves. Now, of course, the view of historians and academics is that Plato's story is just made up. He just made it up to make some political or philosophical point. But this cannot be so. That view can't be right. I was very suspicious of that view the first time I heard it from a mainstream historian. Why are they saying that Plato made this up? Plato repeatedly states that it is a true story. And as we look into it further, we find something else, that Plato puts a date on the destruction of Atlantis. He says Atlantis was submerged beneath the waves in a huge global cataclysm 9,000 years before the time of Solon. That gives us an absolute date for this. We know Solon, we know who he was. Solon was a famous Greek lawmaker. He was an ancestor of Plato, as a matter of fact, about 200 years before Plato. And around 600 BC, Solon, the great Greek lawmaker, made a visit to Egypt. And in Egypt, the priests at a temple of Sais in the delta told him the story of Atlantis, and they said that it was written on the walls of the temple. And he said, when did this happen? When was this great civilization destroyed? And they said 9,000 years ago, and that was in 600 BC. So that's 9,600 BC in our calendar. That's 11,600 years ago. Plato is telling us a great civilization was destroyed in a global cataclysm of flood 11,600 years ago. He's laughed at by all academics and historians. But then geology comes along, and lo and behold, what do we find? 11,600 years ago is a truly cataclysmic episode in geological history. It's called Meltwater Pulse 1b. We have a massive rise in sea level as the ice sheets on North America and Northern Europe just crumble and collapse into the ocean. If Plato made the whole thing up, he was just astonishingly on the money with the latest geology. And I think that we really have to reconsider our attitudes to these stories that have come down to us from the past. Academics have been too quick to dismiss them, too quick to say, oh, we've figured the whole story out, there's no mystery there. Maybe there's a huge mystery there. Maybe we should listen to these clues and hints from the past that speak of a great civilization. So when I published Fingerprints of the Gods in 1995, it was at the end of a long lineage going back to Plato and before, and of course famously Ignatius Donnelly in the 1900s, the early 1900s and late 1800s wrote Atlantis, the Antediluvian World, which was a huge investigation of Atlantis. So this subject has been tackled again and again and again and again. Mainstream academia has said, no, it's impossible, there could be no lost civilization, we know everything about the past, and it's been dismissed. But the problem is that new evidence keeps coming out, which can't be explained by the existing historical model. New evidence that just doesn't fit the picture. And my sense is that this evidence is now becoming overwhelming, and that we're reaching a tipping point. Maybe not this year, maybe not next year. But within our lifetimes, we are going to see a completely new understanding of the past, a radical revisioning of the past, and therefore of our place in the world as well.
Did you know when you published that book in '95 that you were picking a fight with academia, that you were going to soon be their nemesis for the next 20 years?
I didn't know that really. I understood that there were academics with entrenched positions on this subject, but I didn't realize how violent it could become, how really powerful the reaction could be, and how concerted and organized it could be. I didn't realize that actually the past is an ideological subject in our society, and that it is a subject that is therefore tightly controlled as to what we are to know and not know about the past.
By the current politicians and the current people, not just academics.
You see, when you have a huge civilization, as we have to do today, with billions of people all around the world, and you're in a leadership role, you want them kind of organized and productive and doing stuff, and that you want them to feel good about that. So you want to tell them a story about why that should be good, why they should go to work every day, and basically maybe not enjoying themselves, but they go to work, earn their salary, and buy consumer goods. This is what our society is about. It's about production and consumption, and we're supposed to feel good about that. And the historical model that we have at the moment tells us that we, 21st century technological society, is the absolute apex and pinnacle of human achievement. We are it. We're the bee's knees, you know. We've made it. We're the end of that long story, and here we are, and we should just produce and consume endlessly in this sort of hedonistic binge, and that's what life is all about. And that is very nice for those in positions of power, because if people will buy into that, they stay quiet, they don't ask questions, they don't complain, they don't riot in the streets, they just do their jobs. And I would suggest that the historical model that we have at the moment is part of that system of control. It's part of saying that it's perfectly normal and right that things should be as they are. We should be very pleased with ourselves. We're not doing anything wrong, and let's just carry on doing what we do.
So when you shake that up and publish a book that has a lot of research to it, a lot of thought to it, it starts upsetting lots of different people. And the academics come after you, but there's a lot of people that just don't want to hear this.
Well, academics and their friends in the media. This is a very substantial issue. There's a whole network of ideas. I'm not talking about a conspiracy, actually. This isn't a conspiracy. It's just the way the world works. But the way the world changes is that people come along and suggest things which may be very uncomfortable for those who are in power. And when you're in power, you don't like to feel uncomfortable, so you do whatever you can to put that down. Now, from an academic's point of view, let's say a professor of archaeology, he has invested his whole career in a particular model of the past. He or she have invested their whole career in a particular model of the past. That model was already set when they went into the profession. Right there, the very moment they start doing their first exams at university, a filter is being applied. If they are in any way outside the accepted teaching, if they are suggesting that things are not as they are taught, then they will not pass those exams, or they will not do well, and they will not. So in a way, in order to do well academically in that field, you have to buy into the existing model. Because if you don't buy into the existing model, your paper will be marked down, and you will not get the results that could eventually lead you to becoming an academic. So by definition, academics are already people who've bought into the model, and their careers are invested in that model. And they're all decent people. They're all good people. They believe passionately that they're right, and that this is how it is. And that belief also becomes existential in a way. It's very easy for people to become deeply invested in their ideas. I think we all do this. We have a certain set of ideas. We become deeply invested in them, and when those ideas are challenged, it's not just an intellectual discussion anymore. We take it as an attack on us in person. I think that's fundamentally why academics reacted to me in the way that they did. I was arguing that the whole field of history and archaeology may have got the origins of civilization completely wrong, but at a personal gut level, that was taken by many academics as a direct attack on them and their place in the world. And that then resulted in a counterattack on me. Now, the counterattacks on me would never have happened if my book had been a failure. There's lots of books of alternative history that say radical things, but most of them don't appear above the radar. This one did appear above the radar, and as a result, there was a concerted effort was made to discredit me, and that is a bit of a conspiracy. You know, when you have academics who write to the BBC and they say you must bring this man down. You know, when they actually say that, and the BBC makes a program which is designed to damage my reputation, and that program is then later found to have been unfair by the Broadcasting Standards Commission, something odd is going on here in this. Something a little bit to do with reality control is happening there.
And this is systemic because it doesn't stop with the BBC, other media sources. TED, you've had your ups and downs.
It's very weird with TED.
I
just find it very, very strange because I used to like the odd TED talk when I heard it, and you know, I thought, well, okay, ideas worth spreading. I can go with that, and some interesting discussions. And I think it's fairly well known. I do a TEDx event in January 2013. I'm there. Rupert Sheldrake is there. Yeah. Satish Kumar is there, a bunch of other people are there. We all give talks and they go up on the TED YouTube channel. And then 2 weeks later, TED removes my talk and it removes Rupert Sheldrake's talk. And well, naturally there's a fuss about this and people want to know why. And TED say, oh, well, because these were pseudo-scientific ideas. Well, they never justified or supported that. They accused us of representing ideas about consciousness which were not scientific. That's not the case at all. Rupert Sheldrake is a highly credentialed scientist. These ideas were scientific enough, but they were the kind of science that these people don't like. There's a certain faction in science which is called materialist reductionism, where everything is reduced to matter. So the idea that there could be anything to consciousness beyond the brain is anathema to such scientists. Those scientists believe that consciousness, they call it an epiphenomenon of brain activity. Okay, we have these big brains. We evolved them in order to survive in the jungle of survival of the fittest. And a kind of accidental byproduct of that, we got this thing called consciousness. Believe it or not, that is what people like Richard Dawkins actually believe. That consciousness is an accidental byproduct of brain activity. Rupert Sheldrake and I were suggesting that that's not the case, that it's much more mysterious than that. And that's why they took our talks offline. Not because they were unscientific, but because they challenged a dogma of a particular faction of science. And in fact, Rupert and I received huge support from many scientists after that who said that TED were way out of line to do this, and that the ideas that we were presenting were not unscientific. They were leading edge, but they were not unscientific. So in the end, TED were forced to put the talks back, not on their YouTube channel, but on their main site. They were forced to publish the reasons why they'd taken them offline. They were forced to cross all those reasons out, a very humiliating climb down for TED, and those are still left online with all their bogus reasons for removing the talks crossed out and our rebuttals placed there and the talks back online. So a few years later, in 2015, a TEDx organizer in Reading in England comes up to me and says, would I do a TED talk with him? TEDx event. And I said, well, you know, I've had a bit of trouble with TED in the past. And he said, yeah, but I like your subject and I want you to speak. And I'm an independent organizer and I want you to speak. So I said, okay, I'll do it. And I went and did it. And lo and behold, after 2 weeks, this time TED think they're getting smart. They realize they got a massive backlash from censoring me and taking me offline. So now they leave it online, but they stick a huge health warning on it, basically saying this is not politically correct. This is not sanctioned, authorized science. You know? And so the view of TED seems to be that actually its audience can't make up their own minds, that they're like children, that they're not capable of deciding for themselves, and that TED must curate and shepherd everything and to present them with the correct material for their minds. And to me, this is absolutely astonishing. It's astonishing that TED would, well, I'll not get involved with TED again. I thought I'd give them another chance. I thought they'd learned from the previous experience, but now I see that they haven't learned at all. and that there's no point whatsoever in using their platform.
Yeah, I think they're very sensitive about consciousness, psychedelics. You probably are at one of the very few talks that's even up there.
Oddly enough, they have covered psychedelics
Really?
in talks before. I don't think that's the problem. I think they're willing to talk about psychedelics, particularly in view of the fact there's such a lot of good scientific research going on psychedelics now.
Yeah.
They're willing to talk about that. But the question is, how do you position that talk? If you were to suggest, as I do, that in altered states of consciousness we may access valuable and useful information, which may be of fundamental importance to humanity, that's a step too far for an organization.
And then they
like
call
that.
it pseudoscience
Yeah.
or something, and then they kind of redact some of those accusations. Yeah. I had Lawrence Krauss in here, and he did the movie with Richard Dawkins, The Unbelievers. And
Right.
I think both of them have this theory that, you know, the consciousness, there really isn't anything more to it from a scientific viewpoint. And
They need to go take some DMT.
what happens when you challenge people to that? Someone challenged Richard Dawkins to that. You did.
I challenged Richard Dawkins when he came to speak in my hometown, which is Bath, and he spoke in the public library. So I thought I'd go along, and he was promoting a book called The Magic of Reality. So I wanted to question him about his views on reality. And my question to him, which I recorded and put on YouTube, and his answer, was that there are cultures who believe that reality is much more complicated than just matter, and that they believe that drinking a visionary substance like ayahuasca can give them access to those realms. Have you ever, as a scientist, tested your own prejudices by working with one of these substances and seeing what the effect that the experiences have on your thinking? And he was interesting. He said, yeah, under the right circumstances, with, you know, correct medical support, as long as I could be sure I was safe, I would do it. So I await the day when Richard Dawkins has his first massive DMT trip and possibly thinks again about a few things.
Right, and there's a possibility, right? He's probably...
Well, I think there is a possibility, especially with, at any rate, it's not impossible. The conditions that Richard Dawkins set, which would be, when I asked him that question and he publicly answered to it, was that he wanted medical supervision. He wanted to be assured that he would be safe. Well, there's work going on with psychedelics at Imperial College in London right now, which will provide him with all of those things. So if Richard Dawkins actually wants to put his money where his mouth is, he can contact Professor Richard Nutt, and he can have, at any rate, a deep psilocybin experience in Imperial College. And I think he would find that interesting. I think even if it didn't shake up his view of the world, he would find it an interesting thing to do.
Yeah, he can do that, I think, legally now, because David Nutt has
Of course,
the ability to do that. And I think they are doing a DMT study next. So,
Hopefully a DMT study is coming up, yeah.
in some way, did Fingerprints of the Gods put you on a journey to start thinking about altered states of consciousness? I mean, as you get more into looking at some of these monuments and monoliths in the history, did that contribute to that journey, or was it just you being exploring?
Not as an individual, I had become aware, if you like, of the spiritual side of life, not through the mainstream religions in the West, but through my studies of ancient Egyptian scriptures and religions. And immersing myself in that material had, I suspect, opened me to the possibility of other realms, of other realities. But I hadn't really considered how one enters or explores those realms. I'd always thought that the Great Pyramid, whatever else it is connected to consciousness in some way, that it's like a huge instrument which is designed to enhance or affect consciousness in certain very specific ways. If you ever have the opportunity to be alone inside the Great Pyramid, as I have had on a few occasions, it's truly a mystical experience, especially if the lights go off. It can be very extraordinary, and it affects consciousness. So I was aware of consciousness. I was aware that there were views that we live in a complex reality, that there are spirit worlds, which quantum physicists might call parallel universes. All of this I was aware of it, but I hadn't really thought this is something I would look into. After I'd finished Fingerprints of the Gods, I then went on and wrote a series of other books on the lost civilization theme. The huge book published in 2002 was Underworld, documenting 7 years of scuba diving, looking for ruins underwater. And I wanted to do something different after that. I wanted to get away from the whole lost civilization and these endless bloody arguments with academics and their mates in the media. I just thought, I've done that. I was interested in human origins. And I need to cut a long story short here, but the background research I did focused on the issue of cave art. When did our ancestors, why did they suddenly start creating this fantastic art in these deep caverns, deep beneath the grounds, or in rock shelters high in mountains in South Africa, all over the world? And then I found there was a really good explanation for that. Let's pay tribute to the late, great Terence McKenna and his book, Food of the Gods.
It's the stoned ape theory.
Implicating psilocybin in the emergence of modern human consciousness. But let's also pay tribute to David Lewis Williams, who's a professor of archaeology and anthropology at the University of Witwatersrand in South Africa. And David Lewis Williams, right back to the 1970s, had been arguing that the secret of rock and cave art all around the world was that it was shamanistic art, that these were shamans who had entered deeply altered states of consciousness, returned to the everyday state of consciousness, and painted their visions. And that's why there's so much in common with these images all around the world. And I suddenly realized, this is fascinating. There seems to be this moment in the human story when the light just goes on and we become recognizably us. That's what I'm going to look at. So then the next thing was, okay, I'm a hands-on researcher. I'm not just going to sit in a fucking armchair and write about this. I've got to do some serious work.
That's the journalist in you, right?
Yeah, I'm going to do some serious work. That's the journalist in me.
Because an academic would have just sat in the armchair.
Perhaps. And indeed, David Lewis Williams, who I have huge respect for, has done precisely that. He refuses to take any psychedelic, even though his argument is that psychedelics were responsible for cave art. Okay. He doesn't want to take one himself. He says, I don't want to burn my brains, and anyway, the research is there. I don't work that way. If I'm going to write about something, I have to experience it. Otherwise, I shouldn't be writing about it. And therefore, I needed to have psychedelic experiences. I had psychedelic experiences before, very few. I'd taken LSD in 1974 when I was 24 years old. And then I had no more psychedelics until I started to research the book that became Supernatural. I discovered that in the Amazon jungle, there are shamans who are drinking a powerful visionary brew, and what are they doing afterwards? They're painting their visions, exactly like those cave artists. I realized it was a key. I could learn from this. So I went to the Amazon, and I had my first series of ayahuasca sessions with shamans in the Amazon, and it was an extraordinary series of experiences which shook me to my core. It gave me what I needed to write my book, to do the research authentically, but something else as well. A whole new path opened up in front of me, an area of inquiry and investigation that I'd never even considered before, and also valuable personal lessons to learn from these ancient teacher plants, because I believe that that's what they are. And our society, with its rabid, hysterical, demonizing attitude to psychedelics, is dead wrong. 100% wrong. And 100 or 200 years from now, people will look back on this age and the persecution of the war on drugs, and they will see it as a terrible time in the human story when a dreadful, dreadful mistake was made, which was only corrected with great difficulty. You know, the people who created the war on drugs are the same ugly people who are invested in war and harm and hatred and damage all over the world. And since we're suffering from the consequences of their actions in those other areas, we should wake up to the fact that the war on drugs is another one of those consequences, that those same vile and evil people who've turned the world into hell are the people who declared the war on drugs.
When it comes to psychedelics, are we getting small wins? Do you feel like we're getting there?
Yes.
Okay.
We are getting small wins in psychedelics. There's a huge process underway. It's difficult to see the whole picture because we're in the middle of it at the moment. It's difficult to know where it's going to go on. I think the internet has played a big role in this. It means that information can't be kept within exclusive little cliques anymore. It means that information is free and that people can gain access to information and find out things for themselves. And I think this has led to an across-the-board questioning of authority structures in our society. See, the curious thing about democracies, we're told democracies are great things, and democracies are great things, of course. But what happens in a democracy is that you get a massive investment in the manipulation of public opinion. See, a dictator doesn't care about manipulating public opinion, because a dictator doesn't care about public opinion. He doesn't need to manipulate the public opinion in order to bring the public with him, because he's operating by force. In a democracy, a politician cannot operate by force. They have to bring the public with them. Now, if democracy really worked, if it was a really good thing, all information would be completely transparent. There would be no lobbyists. There would be no money being paid to give us information. But actually what we live in is a society where vast amounts of money are spent in shaping public opinion on particular areas. This is the society that we live in today, where huge amounts of money are being invested in promoting a particular ideological position. And I think that where we're getting wins is that people are waking up. They're realizing that this is part of a system of manipulation and control. They're realizing we are sovereign adults. We have the right to do with our own bodies what we wish, so long as we do no harm to others. I mean, what an absurd abuse of human rights for a politician to say that he will send you or me to prison because we've experienced a psychedelic. We didn't do any harm to others. We underwent a personal experience, and for that, we're going to be sent to prison. This is the Inquisition. This is like burning people at the stake, you know, for not following a particular version of Christianity. This is an appalling abuse that's taking place in our society. So people are waking up to that. It's part of an overall waking up to the way that the world is run. But I think it's at the leading edge of that waking up. And then on the other side, we have great scientists, people like David Nutt, who are refusing to be beaten down by the ideology, who realize that these substances have enormous potential, enormous therapeutic potential, and who, against stiff opposition, are doing the science.
Opposition from other scientists as well.
Opposition from other scientists. They are doing the science and they are getting incredible results. So now we're finding that science is saying, actually, you know what? These psychedelics, they don't really seem to harm people. And they actually do seem to do a really incredible amount of good. They can solve problems of depression, they can solve problems of anxiety, they can solve problems of fear of death amongst people suffering from terminal cancers and so on. They're very healing, life-giving, in the right way, used in the right way, responsibly, correctly. They can be very good things. And science is getting this now. So it's becoming harder for the dominator class to maintain its position on this subject, but they still do.
Yeah.
And of course, in Britain, we've just had the absurd Psychoactive Substances Act published, where I mean, can you believe this? Are we actually living in 2016, or is this 1984? That we are now living in a Britain where any substance that has any effect on your mind is illegal unless it is specifically exempted. What is specifically exempted? Alcohol, tobacco, and caffeine. All other mind-altering substances are now illegal. That means that no adult in Britain can make any choice about their own mind, any choice at all, without breaking the law. This seems to me a very strange situation. But there's hope in it, because the law is so ridiculous that it's going to bring the law itself into disrepute. That if politicians are so stupid that they create such a law in the first place, sooner or later they will have been given enough rope to hang themselves.
Do you think Britain's going backwards then when the US is going slightly forward?
I think Britain's going really radically backwards at the moment because we have a bunch of incredibly dull, narrow-minded, stupid politicians in Britain. Got plenty of dull, narrow-minded and stupid politicians in America as well. But America is a country where actually democracy can work. The citizens of Colorado decided that it was extremely inconvenient for them and an abuse of their rights as adults that they were not allowed to smoke cannabis. So they made cannabis legal. They took a vote, they legalized it, and now you can go into beautiful cannabis boutiques across Colorado and be treated as an adult, buy whatever you want, and leave. Nobody is judging you. Nobody's asking you questions. Nobody's sending you to prison. This is a great thing about America, that individual bits of America can make up their mind on an issue regardless of the federal view. See, I can't imagine Northumberland or Yorkshire making cannabis legal. With Westminster disagrees, but Colorado and Alaska can. So yeah, I think America is moving ahead. It's a good thing too, because America as a state entity has been the driving force behind all the evils of the war on drugs. So it's a very good thing that the American people at the grassroots level are saying enough, and they are ending that war state by state. Because make no mistake, the ending of the war on cannabis is the beginning of the end of the war on drugs. Yeah. And those who are invested in the war on drugs are desperately struggling to stop the legalization of cannabis because they know that it's going to open the floodgates, and suddenly, all over the world, adults will be allowed to make decisions about their own minds, their own bodies, and their own consciousness without asking anybody's permission or breaking anybody's law, so long as they do no harm to others.
It's fascinating to watch this kind of a civil war in America where the federal is saying one thing, the state is saying the other. They both don't want to fight too hard against the other, but it's changing.
Yeah.
And you spend time in Colorado. When you're in a state like that is open to this idea of having sovereignty over your own body, does that have a knock-on effect to the rest of the society? Does it just seem like a different place?
I think it does, yeah. I like the air in Colorado. I feel that I'm breathing the air of some kind of freedom there, that people have freely chosen a particular way and they've made it happen. Interestingly, people from all over America are flocking to Colorado. It's a very attractive place to go and live now. I understand property prices are zooming up. There's a huge economic boom as a result of cannabis. I suspect a lot of other states are looking at that and thinking this may be the way to go. It's still today 750,000, 750,000 Americans are still arrested every year for possession of cannabis. That's 750,000 Americans every year who are getting criminal records for doing what? Having a mild experience in their own homes, doing no harm to others. Of course, this is insane. And the same society even encourages them to drink alcohol, which is a far more dangerous drug. So we need to wake up as a human species. We need to, we need to become our own leaders. This is in my view, the next step forward is, do we really need leadership? If we need leaders, then that suggests we are infants, that we're not capable of making mature and informed decisions ourselves. And I think that if humanity is going to progress, if we're going to move forward, that's the next step that we have to come to, that the role of leadership in society gets reduced. That we don't have these high-profile campaigns and these celebrity leaders going around. We don't actually need leaders. We can all be our own leaders. We need administrators. We need technocrats who can do certain things for us, but they're working for us. We're not working for them, you see. That's the thing.
It's interesting you say that now that we're in full bore of a, incredibly, almost intensely insane American presidential race where it's not only leaders, but it's turned into celebrity. It's almost turned into show business.
Yeah.
And no one really questions the fact that we should maybe not be voting for someone and lead ourselves. It's more who are we voting for? Let's talk about this person. But people aren't really asking the questions you're talking about.
No, those questions aren't being asked. But I think it's interesting what we're observing in America. I think what's driving it in America is a deep distrust of authority and a deep distrust of anything that's connected to the status quo. I'm not sure if politicians have really got the message yet. There's absolute revulsion at them here in Britain and in America. We're revolted by our political class. They're disgusting individuals. I can hardly think of a politician whose hand I would even wish to shake. And I would certainly be washing my hands afterwards if I did. Really repulsive individuals. So
the vote for Trump is really a vote against them.
I think it's a vote against the system.
Yeah.
I think it's a vote against the system that has failed Americans again and again and again. And it's the same system all over the world that's failing Britons and failing the French and failing everybody else. It's a global system of control. I think people are aware of that. I think they're fed up with that, and I think they want change. So Trump is getting support because he's certainly not part of that. He looks different. He sounds different. He feels different. Bernie Sanders got a lot of support for the same reason. He looks and sounds different. They were saying very different things, but both of them were anti-establishment figures. And that's what's going on here, that the establishment itself is losing its grip. And we are seeing a kind of crazy chaos resulting from that. But we will sort it out. Human beings are capable of sorting things out. We don't need leaders to sort things out. We can sort things out ourselves.
So this is progress, really.
I would say so.
Okay.
Yeah.
You mentioned cannabis before. When you were here 4 years ago, you talked about your relationship with cannabis and how another plant ally, Mother Ayahuasca, had kind of discussed things about the other plant ally, cannabis, with you. Has your relationship with cannabis changed since then?
Yeah, a bit.
Can you describe
So
that?
basically what happened with me and cannabis was that I had a very long relationship with cannabis. It started late. I didn't start smoking cannabis until I was 37 years old. And by the time I was in my early 40s, it had become a very central part of my life. And that's when I discovered I could write with cannabis as well as, just enjoy nice food. So I actually wrote Fingerprints of the Gods entirely under the influence of cannabis. I was stoned, and my critics will say, "Oh, that explains everything," and they do actually.
Right, they do. Okay.
Yeah, that's one of the arguments. Hancock uses drugs, so we can't believe anything he says.
The ultimate ad hominem argument.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Yeah. So where was I?
Oh yes, the relationship with cannabis. So it started in the early 40s.
The problem was, cannabis, like any of our plant allies, needs to be treated with respect. If you use this stuff 16 hours a day, 7 days a week, that's not respecting it. And I was definitely getting bent out of shape in lots and lots of ways. I realize now that at that period of my life, around about 2009, 10, 11, thereabouts, I had become extremely paranoid and very suspicious of other people's motives. I lived in constant suspicion. And that's when I had a series of 5 sessions of ayahuasca in Brazil in October 2011. And those sessions focused entirely on my cannabis habit. And they showed me that I was behaving in a way that was hurtful and damaging to other people, that this suspicion, this jealousy that was connected with cannabis in some way was hurtful to others. And it was not a good thing. And I was given a very powerful kicking by ayahuasca, and when I came back from Brazil, I found I couldn't smoke cannabis anymore.
You tried.
I tried.
Fired up the vaporizer, and then
I couldn't smoke it. I fired up the vapor. I filled this big bag of, vapor, and I took one inhalation on, and I felt absolutely disgusted. And I'd never known. I didn't understand it at all. But I couldn't go on. I literally couldn't go on. Ayahuasca had made me stop completely smoking cannabis, and that carried on for 3 years, from October 2011 right through until
the Joe Rogan Experience.
The Joe Rogan Experience in September 2014.
Right.
So I'm sitting talking to Joe live, as we are now, and he says, as you just asked me, what's the thing with you and cannabis? Have you still not smoking it? And I said, yeah, nearly 3 years now. Haven't touched it, but I'm beginning to think maybe I could dip my toes back in the water. So Joe says, why don't you start now? And pulls out a nice fat California joint.
Joe doesn't need a lot of encouragement for that.
So we lit it up and smoked it on air, and I did enjoy it, actually, very much. And so what's happened since then is it that in situations like Colorado, where there's no hassle, okay, I'm not compelled, I don't feel a compulsion to use cannabis anymore in the way that I did, but I do enjoy using it, and where it's convenient and easy for me to do it, spending a lot of time in Colorado these days, I do. I particularly like cannabis in the form of oil. I don't smoke. For many years I didn't smoke, I used a vaporizer. But I think cannabis oil is a very interesting way to take cannabis.
Orally?
Yes,
okay, yeah.
Orally. And of course, in Colorado, with the whole medical marijuana industry, they've really developed really excellent cannabis products, and you can pick and choose exactly what you want, and with the full knowledge that it's totally legal and nobody's going to break down your door or wreck your life for doing so.
And again, safe, and you know what it is, and yeah. What a concept, right?
It's a really great concept.
Continue watching this fascinating conversation for free by clicking on the link below to visit our website, and I'll see you on the inside.
I think it's important to work on the way we behave with other people, and to try as far as possible to be nurturing and positive, but also to be honest. Be your own leader. Don't accept the leadership of others.
Hi, it's Brian Rose from London Real. You probably know that we've just recently been re-platformed on YouTube after 25 months completely in the dark. The truth is, I really need your help. What I really need you to do is click on that subscribe button right now, like this video, and maybe even leave a comment or share the link with friends. We're really fighting against an algorithm that's tried to keep us quiet for so long, and the more subscribers we have, the more people watch our content, the better guests we can bring you, the better content, and we can continue transforming lives. We've been doing this for 14 years now. I want to do this for another 14 years, but I really need your help. So click on that subscribe button, like the video, leave a comment, share this, and we're going to continue to bring you more and more great content. Thank you. Most people will never see this opportunity. Dubai luxury transformation projects have historically delivered 40 to 90% annual returns. That is incredible. These were once reserved only for insiders with access. I spent 15 years on Wall Street, and I learned this: the biggest returns always go to the people who get the call first. Now, you finally can. We've just received a brand new project with major upside potential. Allocations move fast. Click the link, apply now, and speak to my team. This is your chance to see what others never will.